bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go! And a good winning walkthrough Wednesday morning, Eagle fans. You got your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald here with a hang with you on Birds 365. The midweek kind of start to turn the corner and look ahead to the next opponent. Show we got ready to rock and roll for you over the next 2 hours. Appreciate you streaming on in. We'll be here for 2 hours, making the most of it, giving you some Eagles insight and info. Quick shout out to one of the guys on the stream. And again, we don't reference the stream often, except if you guys blatantly misstate facts about whether John and I said something. But DeForest Shields signed in like minutes before the show. Usually John and I don't even get it. He was already had a stream point up before either you or I jumped in, Johnny Mac. He wanted to let us know that he's already left for Arizona. And he'll be staying there through February 12th this year because he has complete and utter faith that that's where the Eagles are headed and going to be victorious when he gets on the plane and comes back east to Forest Shield. Don't recognize the name. We got a lot of good regular streamers who are on here every single day, and we appreciate them. But thanks for getting on early, DeForest. You and I on early, but that's not a problem, John. Do it every single day. And I realized I haven't asked you yet this week. How you feeling? You were fighting a pretty good cold last week. Even gave you a hard time about it. You closer to 100%?
Yeah, I'm closer. I'm still struggling with the cough. So whatever's going around, it's this constant cough, and that's
really.
Yeah, Bob Groach was doing the shtick with the mask on Monday. You know, because there's so much coughing in the press box. It's not just me. There's something going on. Something going around. The flu went away for a couple of years because nobody was worried about it with COVID, but now it's back. It's back, and it's ping-ponging back and forth between people.
And I'll readily admit I'm just a stone-cold idiot, always have been, always will be. I'm vaccinated. I have taken the proper steps for COVID. I never got a flu shot, never once in my life, and I didn't get one again this year. I just I saw the reasons why you should be vaccinated. But I've never been, I don't catch, I just haven't had the flu.
Yeah, I typically haven't had the flu in years. I don't even, they told me I had the flu. I didn't feel like I had the flu. I didn't have fevers or chills or anything of that nature. It was more just a cough.
Just a cough, huh?
You know, bad headache for a couple of days. That's pretty much it. But, you know, in the post-COVID world, I'm more concerned about other people than, you know, typically you just work through this kind of stuff.
Right.
But now, and, you know, people look at you and I always joke, it's like Donald Sutherland at the end of Invasion of Body Snatchers, and they point at you and, you know, if you're sick. So you feel weird going anywhere when you're sick. At least I do.
No, I appreciate you not giving it to me. Thank you very much. Not
Yeah.
sure that. Yeah.
Well, the studio, you're right next to me in the studio. So
I don't know how many miles we are apart, but
not
thank
many,
you for
but
not giving it to me.
yeah.
All right. How happy a Tuesday was it in Eagleville yesterday, Johnny Mac?
Too happy, man. Too happy of a Tuesday. There's nothing to complain about with this team. There's nothing to complain about with this team. This is the
Oh,
best team in
give
football.
me a chance. I'll give it to you if
Well,
you want
I
it.
know I do it all the time, but we acknowledge it's nitpicking for the most part. I mean, look, this is boring to me. I say it all the time. It's boring. This team is too good. It's boring.
All right. You
It
want a
is
legit
boring.
nitpick? I'll start right away. Robert Quinn to the IR.
Yeah, that's nitpicking,
5
Jody.
games played. He's got a grand total of 2 tackles in 70 snaps played so far in Eagle Green. He has given them nada, 0, zip, zilch. And the Eagles did give up a 4th-round pick to get him, which we all understand the value of a 4th-round pick. It's not a 1st-round pick, but it's not a 7th-round pick. It's right there, right in the middle. And for what they've gotten out of Robert Quinn, they're guaranteed to get nothing out of him for the next 4 games. It looks like a pretty bad trade. Now, again, big picture, Howie Roseman, the job he's done, maybe the executive of the year. Are we nitpicking over this bad deal? Probably. But it's a bad deal, John. Two tackles?
Yeah, I thought it was a deal that
for
wasn't.
Robert Quinn?
Even when they made it, I thought it was unnecessary. Now, they took a swing. You're a baseball guy. I'm pretty sure nobody's hit 1,000. Yeah, it's not a good trade. They made a mistake. They probably, fell into that trap. You heard the narrative about the bad season in Chicago, and he was seeing all the double teams, which were true. I mean, he did see a ton of double teams in Chicago because they don't have anybody else. And you said you kind of talk yourself into, well, this guy had 18.5 sacks last year. The drop off couldn't be that drastic. Well, it seems to be that drastic. Sometimes it just happens. And yeah, he wasn't giving him much in limited snaps in the first couple games. He was healthy. And then you start talking about the injury popping up on a Friday, and on the week you need a roster spot for Jordan Davis, and they ended up going a different direction, maybe to throw the dogs off the scent. Who knows? Because they need a spot for Avonte Maddox this week. If they start, and I assume they're going to start his 21-day practice window at the bare.
You mean he's going to be part of the walkthrough today?
Yeah, I would. I'm very comfortable saying they're
going to test them big time, huh?
They're going to start the window. Yeah, it's more, procedural. You have to do it. So, but the good news is they have the open roster spot because of the manipulation they did yesterday, and there's the spot for Avonte Maddox if he's ready to go on Sunday. He's the next one back. So it was Jordan Davis. This week it was Avonte. Last week it was Avonte Maddox. This week, Dallas Goedert, December 18th in Chicago is eligible. And then the talk is this is not a season-ending injury for Robert Quinn, but he could be back for the final regular season game and a playoff push.
Yeah, let's rush him back. You need his half a tackle a game.
But I mean, this is the definition of nitpicking. You don't get everything right. The Eagles are close to got Howie Roseman. I'm talking about is pretty good batting average. Yeah, but he got this one wrong.
He does, but again, I'm going to nitpick the snot out of this, I guess. To use your continued baseball analogy, in-season trades last however many years you want to go back. Howie swung and missed it a couple of times in mid-season trades where you're giving up draft picks for a guy where you're not even guaranteed to get you're only guaranteed to get a partial part of the season. Denard Avery, this one, Jay Ajayi was certainly a ribby single up the middle that scored an important run, but in-season trades by Howie Roseman has not been his strong suit. Everything else has, and that kind of outweighs the in-season trades, but and just take it in that little narrow focus. That's not what Howie's done best.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think the Jay Ajayi trade, everybody points to that as a good one. I think, it was fine. It worked, but I think that was overblown. I think the success of that one was overblown. Let's put it that way. And I think the claim that Jannard Avery, I mean, that wasn't a bad trade. I mean, he was here for years and he was a young player on a contract, a cost-effective contract. No, it's not a great trade, but he's like a 4th-round pick. All right, they gave up a 4th-round pick. It's like having a mediocre 4th-round pick for a number of years, and then you move on. So I think the narrative that was a terrible trade, I think that's not the problem with Robert Quinn is, this is the traditional. We'll stick with baseball. This is the traditional rent-a-player trade. He's not on his rookie deal like Jannard Avery. He's got a couple years to play for you. This is it. He was brought in for this run to make a contribution, to step into the role they envisioned for Derek Barnett as the 4th defensive end. And it didn't work. And you give up a 4th-round pick. And you could see the history of the 4th-round picks on this team. There's some contributors. There's some guys who haven't done much. There's a chance you get a contributor in the 4th round, but it's not a catastrophe. Was it worth taking a swing?
No.
Sure. I think so.
No.
I think it was worth taking a swing.
The results are in, John, unless he comes back for the end of the season and makes a huge play in either week. Well, I think the last week, just again, my opinion, is going to be the JV. So he might get some time because that's where he belongs on the JV with what he's done since he put on an Eagle uniform. Unless he makes a play, gets a big sack in a playoff game, it's absolutely an L.
It's an L, but I think it was worth the swing. That's what I said. Your Hall of Famer will stick with baseball if you hit 300, so you fail 7 times. But that doesn't mean you sit up there and you take strike 3. You take the swing. I think it was a worthwhile swing. I think you missed it. Maybe you fouled it back. Maybe you had a chance to do something with it. You got the evaluation wrong. You bought into the fact that the double teams, as I said, but I don't typically look at a guy saying, oh, he's going to have 18.5 sacks one year and he's going to be a disaster the next. It's hard to find that comp where somebody falls off the table to that degree in one calendar year. But that's what's happened. 121 of 122. That's how many defensive ends, edge rushers, edge defenders, PFF grades. He's 121 of 122. The great Alex Wright in Cleveland is the only player worse. And most of that is with Chicago. But, he played in Chicago like he was playing here. And there's no need. And they activated Janarius Robinson, who doesn't play. It didn't work. But I think it was worth the swing.
Right. Yeah, you and I have a different definition of worth the swing. You're going back to when he took the swing, the result is in. It's a swing and a miss. So it wasn't worth taking the swing because the result is pretty much etched in stone now.
But that's what I'm saying. That's my baseball analogy. You're a baseball guy. If there's runners on and 2 outs and you're up, would you rather keep the bat on your shoulder or at least take the swing? Now, if you strike out, it's not a success. I'm not arguing with you. It's not a success. But the swing is worth it. I'd rather swing. I'd rather try than sit there with the bat on my shoulder. That's my only point.
If that swing is a 3-2 pitch and it's 6 inches off the plate and you swing through it, the swing was not a good idea. You take ball 4 and go to first base. Pretty damn easy. So again, not a massive thing. With Robert Quinn sucking as badly as he has, the Eagles are 11-1. So again, keep it in the perspective of what it is. It was a swing and a miss by Howie Roseman, but do you think the kid they're bringing up from the practice squad, or activating off the IR, I should say, will actually get time? Do you think he'll be out? You mentioned they needed a roster spot.
No, he didn't get time before, and they're only deeper since, because they added Linval Joseph and Dominican Sue. Now they play different positions, but because they have so many bodies now, and this was the problem with Robert Quinn last week, and I brought it up early in the show. I said what they should do is keep Milton Williams active and let him play more defensive end, even though that's not his natural position, and get the better player on the field, and deactivate and not dress Robert Quinn. Turns out they put him on injured reserve. They did play Milton Williams. That's how I think they'll move forward. You'd prefer a more natural edge rusher. I don't think Janarius Robinson is ready to play at a high level, but they want to keep him. I'll tell you, if you look at him, he looks like an edge rusher. It's ironic because I said the same thing when the Eagles drafted Josh Sweat, and they both came from Florida State. They're both fourth-round picks. They both look like they were created in a lab. If you were doing Hollywood, doing a football movie and said, hey, go get me an edge rusher, you'd pick those guys. They just look like edge rushers. So I think they value his potential down the road, but I don't think he's ready to contribute right now.
Don't think they'll be putting him in there. All right. Yes, coming up this week. Oh, but let me ask you about the practice squad first. We got Zach Berman from The Athletic joining us just a couple minutes. I understand practice squad is the fringe of the roster. It's kind of a safety net more than anything else. They made 3 releases yesterday, so that means they've got openings in the practice squad. Any line of reasoning behind what they did when they did last week? You correctly identified the wide receiver they brought in for a workout and then signed to the practice squad and then released yesterday. You got any good juicy rumors as to why they're doing the practice squad?
It's interesting. We're going to have Zach on. I want to ask him that question. Actually, it is kind of weird they're doing so much churning on the practice squad this late in the season. They brought Anthony Rush back for a week. He's gone again. Kaywan Baker, the receiver, they didn't try out anybody this week that I saw on the wire. So there's no natural. Now, Andre Sachere, if he clears waivers, will be brought back to the practice squad. So you have to see if he clears waivers. But it is a little bit strange. There's so much churn. Now, they had Anthony Rush here years ago. I mean, they brought him back time and time again. I guess they were a little bit concerned about Jordan Davis's ankle, wanting him around. He's a big inside interior player. Maybe they're comfortable and went a different direction. And who knows with these things? I mean, Baker just got here. Maybe they don't like his attitude. I shouldn't have said that because people will start. But it could be anything. It's like, you get somebody in the building, you don't like it, you move on. You churn the back end. But it's a little bit strange, the numbers, I will say, this late in the season.
I was a little surprised by it yesterday. But again, will it make a difference on Sunday against the Giants, who is or isn't on the practice squad this week?
No,
don't think so. Hey, John McMullen, I'm Jody McDonald. We are the Mac and Mac Birds 365 duo. We're going to add a third voice to the mix. Coming up next, one of the best covers the Eagles on a day-in, day-out basis, does it for The Athletic. Zach Berman's going to jump in with us here on Birds 365.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes, to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Jim Gardner is an icon.
A Philadelphia treasure.
He's a mentor, a pace setter.
Jim is my North Star.
He's trusted, revered.
Appreciated.
He is Action News.
He's compassionate. Honest.
And fair. He is extremely dedicated, motivated, and always seeking the truth.
He's also funny. We are a team of many.
Jim Gardner is our leader, and we're lucky to have him.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Jody Mack with John McMullen. We are your Mac Birds 365 guys. Happy to be adding Zach Berman for the next 15-20 minutes to give us some Eagle insight. Zach, thanks for jumping in. You had the Eagles 11-1 after 12 games, right?
Hey, good morning. I did not have them 11-1. Did not anticipate this type of start, but credit to them because they've earned it, right? They're not lucking in the wins. They are beating teams and beating them convincingly.
Yeah, well, let's start there, Zach, because you have sort of something going on tonight. So we'll talk about that. But you're going to have a sort of holiday shopping, gift giving. Ray Jittinger, you, Mike Sealski, going to be out in Bridgeport, Pennsylvania tonight. Your book, Underdogs, we've talked about in the past. You were with this team through the Super Bowl run. You're with the team now. I got to tell you, from my perspective, doesn't guarantee anything at 11-1, but this team's better than the Super Bowl team. I feel comfortable saying that. I want to get your opinion on that.
That's a good point, John. I agree. This team's more talented. I think that across the board, they're just deeper. Where I would say along the lines of scrimmage, I would give the in particular the offensive line. I would probably give the 2017 team the edge. I mean, you had Brandon Brooks playing at an all-pro level. You had Lane Johnson. He's playing at an all-pro level now, but he was then as well. Questions at left tackle. Jason Kelsey was younger, but honestly, the 2022 team, I just think is better. It's deeper. It's more explosive. They have a better secondary. They have they have better weapons on offense. So, and with the way Jalen Hurts is playing, Carson was outstanding in 2017.
Yeah.
And then Nick Foles had 2 weeks of his life, right? In the championship game in the Super Bowl. But what Jalen is doing this year is incredible. But the variable is that 2017 team played great in big games, right? In the NFC Championship game, in the Super Bowl, they were there. They were loose. The moment wasn't too big for them. And we simply don't know yet how this team's going to be in those moments.
Zach, John, and I sat here after the Commanders' loss, and The news that Dallas Goedert was going to IR for 4 weeks. They have the game in Indianapolis where they have to rally 2 late touchdowns just to sneak out a win. And we were wringing our hands about, oh my God, how are they going to replace Dallas Goedert? They can't afford to lose. He's too big a piece of the offense. And then the next 2 weeks, they put up 75 points. So I guess they figured out a way how to somehow replace Dallas Goedert. Who should get the credit for that?
Well, the credit goes around. I mean, you have to look at Howie Roseman for putting this roster together. You have to look at Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen and Brian Johnson and Jeff Stoutland, the offensive coaching staff of that. But most importantly, the players, because what I think this offense does exceedingly well is it's the versatility and the ability to be matchup dependent. I've covered, John's covered, you guys, and you too, Jody, have seen a lot of coaches who they say, this is the way we're going to play, and it doesn't matter who the opponent is, right? What the Eagles do is they look at the opponent and they adjust what they do based on that opponent. That's how they can run for 360 plus yards last week and then throw for 380 yards this week. And I frame it that way because the offense is not built around one player. Now, when Dallas Goedert goes down, if AJ Brown were to go down, especially if Jalen Hurts were to go down, things would fundamentally change, and things have changed without Goedert. But the offense is not dependent on Goedert the same way. It's not dependent really on anyone else except Jalen Hurts and perhaps Jason Kelce.
Yeah, I've always said, Zach, that to me, this team has morphed into not a run first team, not a pass first team, but a Jalen Hurts first team.
Well said.
And to me, when you talk about 363 on the ground against Green Bay, 380, and remember, they pulled the plug. They, mercy rule at 9:40 left in the game with Jalen Hurts at 380. You got to go back to 1987, the Raiders, to find a team who's done that. It's kind of historic versatility, the ability to toggle back and forth. And I think it's I think it's everything. I think it's the quarterback. I think it's the offensive line. I think it's the coaching staff. But if I were to pin you down and say, what is the biggest part of it, or something else, if you want to throw it out there, the biggest part of that ability, what would you say that is?
Well, the biggest part of the ability is Jalen Hurts, because the variable that he provides, the ability he provides in the running game, and then the way he's progressed as a passer this year, it's built around him. The fact that they're able to do it, or the willingness to do it, that goes to the coaching staff, because I can't emphasize the point I made previously enough. So many coaches say, this is our offense, right? And you have to stop us. Right. And it's almost like an offensive driver versus a defensive driver. Okay. The Eagles are the type of driver who's looking at everyone else on the road, and then they're going to know to adjust to what the other cars are doing. And not every coach is like that. And this is a coaching staff on both sides of the ball, by the way, that will rebuild or reconfigure their game plan each week, depending on the opponent. So Jalen Hurts is the reason why they're able to do it, but the reason that they do it is the coaching staff.
Over the last month, Zach, the Eagles have had 3 pretty significant injuries, not season-ending, and no, Robert Quinn is not one that I'm referring to here, John. First, Maddox goes down, then Goddard goes down, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson goes down. With Maddox, Josiah Scott stepped in, made some nice plays, made some bad plays. They'll be glad to get Maddox back this week. Goddard coming back next week. We all just agreed it's kind of a combination effort as to how they've been able to replace him. Chauncey Gardner, Reed Blankenship has stepped in and played pretty well. He made the one bad play against Christian Watson of the Packers, bad angle, off to the races, 60-yard touchdown. But other than that, I thought he's actually opened up some people's eyes. When Gardner comes back, does Blankenship go back to his special teams only role, or has he done enough in your eyes to merit being part of a mix? I know they don't usually rotate in the defensive backfield. Will they do that going forward?
No, that would be Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's spot. And Blankenship has, I give him credit. He has done well in the past 2 games here. Now, the offenses they've seen, are not teams that have really tested the deep middle of the field. And you saw the Packers do that a bit in the second half. Blankenship, he's done well, and I give him credit there. You saw where the Titans' production was coming in the passing game, and they didn't have a lot of production, but it was coming from the rookie tight end, right? And I would imagine that as the Eagles go forward here without Gardner Johnson, I think teams are going to challenge them in the middle of the field, in the middle and deep middle of the field, and try to see if the Eagles safeties can hang with them there. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson he's so opportunistic on the ball as we've seen, and he can cover. And there are times when he's been out of position this year, and his playmaking ability has allowed him to compensate for it. But I do think that in these next 3 weeks, that's where defenses are going to try to attack the Eagles, and we'll see how Blankenship and Epps do in that spot.
Well, let's talk about that defense, Zach, because it has been impressive. Every measurable number now, number one against the pass, number two overall, the second best generating pressure, the best generating turnovers. I start with the two outside corners. They are having phenomenal years in the fact that the worst passer rating for a starting quarterback in this league is Davis Mills in Houston, about 79-ish, somewhere in that range. The worst completion percentage is Marcus Mariota. It's about over 61%. Bradbury's allowing a 44 completion percentage. Slay's at 50. Their passer rating when targeted is down 25 and 35 points lower than Davis Mills. If you were to start, same question on the offense, if you were to start, what is the key to the defense? Normally I look at the defensive line. I'm a Jim Schwartz guy. It's the engine. But I think it's these corners, Zach. They've been unbelievable.
That's a good way of putting it. The corners have been unbelievable, and certainly in the passing game, that's been a difference, and it's allowed them. You asked a good question again, and yesterday it allows the Eagles to play a certain way when you have two corners that you can trust on the outside. And this is no disrespect to Steve Nelson, but the delta between Nelson last year and Bradbury this year is significant. It's affected the way they've played defense. I think the corners are a big part of it. I still go to the front, right? And, because you need to get to the quarterback on known passing situations, as Jonathan Gannon calls it, on passing downs. And the Eagles are number 2 in the NFL in sacks this year, right? And I keep going back to what Jonathan Gannon said before the season, where the two areas that they wanted to improve from last year were takeaways and affecting the quarterback. Number 1 in the league in takeaways, number 2 in sacks. It's not a coincidence, and it hasn't happened in the way that Buddy Ryan defenses looked or Jim Johnson defenses looked, but it's been more effective than any defense here in a long time, and it's a credit to Gannon. It's a credit to these players.
All right, Zach, the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago against the Packers, you check the rankings, ratings of the team before they come in. All right, you should be able to run the ball against the Packers. They did it for 360 yards. This week, Tennessee's pretty good at stopping the run. Maybe we should try and pass it. They do so to the tune of 380 yards. The Giants' defense isn't great either way. There isn't a big gap between their ability to stop the run or stop the pass because they're not really good against either one. Shane Steichen just gets to make it up as he goes along. Is there a specific direction the Eagles offense you think will go this week, or do we just have to wait till Sunday and see which one flipping the coin Shane comes out with?
Yeah, to me, it's not focusing on the run or the pass. It's focusing on blitz beaters, right? What you're trying to do is have an offense that has answers for the blitz. So whether that is your max protecting and you're going downfield, whether it's having quick outlets for Jalen to get the ball out of Jalen's hands quickly, or whether it's trying to get Jalen on the move so when that blitz comes, he could potentially take off. I don't have the answer for you. Shane Steichen has forgotten more offensive football than I know. But I think that the focus this week, when they're in those meeting rooms, it's going to say we need to have an answer every time they blitz. There should not be a time when we're taken aback by the blitz because they know going into the game the Giants are coming after them.
Yeah, Wink is going to blitz coming off the buses, Zach.
Yep.
The Eagles fans would love Wink Martindale, even though they have the number 2 defense and the number 1 passing defense and the number 1 turnover defense. They don't do it the right way. Who has been doing it the right way, and that's facetious, obviously. Only some in the fan base think that, but nonetheless, it's there. Jalen Hurts, the most impressive thing about me and Jalen Hurts, and I want to run this by you, is his ability to take shot plays. And I asked Shane this yesterday. His ability to take shot plays but not turn the football over. That is rare. That's like Aaron Rodgers territory, Zach. I didn't see this coming. You have 40-yard touchdown to A.J. Brown, 34 to Devontae Smith. I think it was 29 also to A.J. These are shot plays in the NFL. And he doesn't turn it over. Usually you're being aggressive when you're taking those shot plays. Jalen Hurts has thrown 3 interceptions. What do you attribute that to?
I attribute it just to Jalen's progression, right? This is a credit to Jalen. I didn't see it coming either. I didn't see Jalen having this type of effectiveness in the passing game. I think part of it is his receivers, AJ in particular, are making plays on the ball. But Jalen is keeping the ball out of harm's way. And by the way, if you go back and you look at his college numbers, he wasn't a turnover-prone quarterback in college, right? Yeah. And if you look at Jalen last year and Jalen, even the times he played as a rookie, passing efficiency was a question, right? The ball was on the ground too much, but the ball wasn't in the other team's hands too often. And so I'm not surprised by how well he's taking care of the ball. There's the coach's son adage there, right? He knows the value of that. But what I'm surprised about is how often the ball is landing in the Eagles' hands, because he has not been this efficient throughout his career, and he is this season. Excuse me.
All right, Zach, last one for me. Fill in the blank. Both blanks, if you'd be so kind. We'll pick whichever blank you want to fill in. The Eagles are now 12-1 after Sunday game against Giants because they did this, or, yeah, that's the NFC East for you. You never know when you're going to get picked off, and the Eagles fall to 11-2 because the Giants did that. Pick whichever one you think is more fitting for the game this Sunday against New York, against Philadelphia.
Yeah, the Eagles are 12-1 because they're the better team, and B, they're going to take care of the ball. If you look at the games when the Eagles have blown out teams or beaten teams handily, and the games when it might have been a little too close for comfort, the only variable there is turnovers, right? If the Eagles take care of the ball, then they're a better team than the Giants. And I know the Giants are well coached. The Giants have a record that's frankly better than I anticipated. But if the Eagles simply play the brand of football they've been playing this year, they will win this game and win this game handedly.
Zach, do us a favor. Give us the details on your gathering, your pre-holiday, all you tremendous authors and scribes getting together out in Bridgeport tonight. I know your fearless leader, my buddy Glenn Macklin, not going to be there. He a little under the weather. He caught COVID this week. And sure enough, I was out with him last Wednesday night. He had to tell me, you better get yourself checked, man. Yeah, I got no problem. Yeah. I stayed on the other side of the table while we drank beers together. So no Mac now tonight, but you've got good guys sitting out with you. Give us the details on tonight's book signing.
Yeah, appreciate you asking. Puddler's Pub in Bridgeport. You see Underdogs behind my shoulder here. I'll be selling and signing Underdogs, the Philadelphia Eagles' emotional road to Super Bowl victory. Ray Didinger, Mike Sealski, Leslie Van Arsdale. There's going to be merchandise there. There's everything you need for your holiday shopping and good beer, good food as well. So Puddler's Pub in Bridgeport, 6:30. Look forward to seeing as many of you as possible.
I was out at Puddler's Pub with you guys when they had the Maryland Mike IPA launch a couple months ago. It was a good spot, fun time, having a good time tonight.
Long day for Zach. I'll see you down at the NovaCare.
I'll see you down there. Thanks for having me on.
Well, long day. Zach. Wait, it's a walk-through Wednesday. You guys aren't working, are you? Yeah, I guess you got to go. I guess that counts for McMullen. Probably work as hard as the Eagles will when he goes down there, but it'll be close somewhere there by it. walkthroughs. Love those walkthroughs. All right, thanks, Zach Furman, for hopping in with us. John McMullen, Jody McDonald, your Mac and Mac guys. Hour number 2, we'll go a little bit more of a national attention span. Rob Motti, who is a Philadelphian through and through, you know it. He's covering the entire NFL these days for the Associated Press, but don't kid yourself. He's always got an eye on the Eagles. We haven't had Motti Man up in about a month, so we'll punch him up in hour number 2. Come back, probably talk a little bit more about the Giants, who got off to a 6-1 start, and all of a sudden they're 7-4-1. They've kind of come back to the pack. It's
by the way, I have a question for you, Jody, after the break. I've been inundated this week about the turf at MetLife Stadium. I want to know if the Jets complain about it, because everybody seems to be complaining about it. The turf at MetLife Stadium.
Not great. It's a legit complaint, but depending on how far you take it, it can be overblown. Okay, that's another thing that we'll talk about, because, yeah, the Eagles are going to be on that turf at MetLife Stadium on Sunday. Eagles, Giants, McMullen, and McDonald looking ahead next year on Birds 365.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Jim Gardner is an icon.
A Philadelphia treasure.
He's a mentor, a pace setter.
Jim is my North Star.
He's trusted, revered,
Appreciated.
He is Action News.
He's compassionate. Honest.
And fair. He is extremely dedicated, motivated, and always seeking the truth.
He's also funny. We are a team of many.
Jim Gardner is our leader, and we're lucky to have him.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. That makes us Mac and Mac here on Birds 365. The 11-1 Birds get back to work, or at least walk through today, in preparation for their game coming up on Sunday against the Giants. And that will be in MetLife Stadium, where Johnny Mac, they have changed the turf. They had that slit turf because they play as many games as they do there with both the Jets and the Giants sharing the stadium. So they did change it. They didn't go to grass, but they did go to a different type of turf field. the issue isn't the turf. The issue isn't what the surface is. The issue is the NFL allowed the Jets and Giants to have a stadium, use it together, so they both didn't have to shell out for billion-dollar stadiums. And when you share it, it's going to get beat up. If it was grass, it'd be tremendously.
Yeah, I was just surprised how much. There's a bunch of people contacted me this week about the turf there and how players complain, and because I had not really heard that much about it, not following the Giants and Jets that closely, but obviously with the Eagles and Jalen Hurts last year. And by the way, it's Wednesday. I got to bring that in, so you know what that means, Jody. Mike Gill's not here to partake, but
potential awards for Philadelphia Eagle players.
Not potential. For the second consecutive week, the soon-to-be MVP of this league, Jalen Hurts, NFC Offensive Player of the Week, for the second consecutive week.
Very nice,
Jalen Hurts, offensive.
But last week was the first time he got it. He'd gotten Player of the Month.
He got Player of the Month previously, correct? Right. Second consecutive week. It's been almost every week. Defensive player. Brandon Graham won defensive player earlier in the season. Hassan Reddick. Special teams, surprisingly. Zach McPherson won it. Cameron Dicker won it.
Wait a minute. Zach McPherson won Special Teams Player of the Week?
Week 1. He won Special Teams Player of the Week in Detroit. Week 1.
And I thought you meant this past week.
No.
Earlier in the year. I was going to say, Eagles had some guys that stepped up on special teams. One of their best special teams was easily their best special teams week of the year. Either Ellis, the addition, or Kobe Dean, or Britton Covey would be the guys I would have thought if someone was going to win it this past week for the Eagles.
Yeah, I would have given it to Christian Ellis.
Yeah.
But no, they've had so many. This is Players of the Week all year, which they certainly lead the NFL, like everything else. But Jalen Hurts, second consecutive. That's rare. I was trying to look. The league didn't note who the previous one would be, but that's rare. Here we go. Becomes the first Eagle player to ever win a Player of the Week award in consecutive weeks. All right, not that rare. Second player to do it this season. Josh Allen, AFC Player of the Week, Offensive Player of the Week, consecutive weeks, weeks 5 and week 6. But still, it's pretty impressive.
No, I'm glad that Hurts got it because Sundays on CBS when I jump in with Zach Gelb on Eye on Football, their Around the League show that they do for 8 hours on Sundays. I give a helping hand for the last 2. We give out game balls at the end, 3 apiece. And I debated on whether to give it to Jalen Hurts or to give it to A.J. Brown last week because they both had phenomenal weeks. A.J. is kind of dependent on Jalen to get him the ball, so the dynamic is a little bit different. And I went with Jalen just because Jalen did as much as he did with other players. It wasn't all A.J. Brown. A.J. was the number one target, but he also shared the ball around with Devontae getting over 100 yards as well, so that's why I went with him. So I'm glad the league agreed with me. I had to make that decision on Sunday. They will wait till Wednesday to hand out Player of the Week.
A.J. Brown just got getting first place GMs fired. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think that part of it's a little bit overblown because everything I heard from our buddy Teron Davenport, as well as some other people I know down there, Robinson wanted to keep him as well. That was more of a organizational decision. Mike Vrabel really wanted to keep A.J. Brown. I mean, they really like each other. That's not bull, you know what. They had a big hug for each other before the game. If you go back to draft night, there's that viral clip that they had in the Titans draft room. Mike Vrabel was visibly upset when they made the deal, had to walk away from the table. So the head coach really liked A.J. Brown. The GM, you can kind of argue it both ways. They had significant salary cap issues, so that's the GM, right? and you're in a position where you can't pay your best offensive player, well, you could argue.
Right. But here's why I'm not sure that I buy that, John. They had the draft, they made the deal, and then after, Robinson signed a 6-year contract extension. If he was that put off by being dictated to, listen, you got to trade your best wide receiver. We're already paying Henry. We're not going to pay him too. We need to get as much as we can for him in exchange. If you were kind of dictated to and you're the general manager from above, why the hell would you sign a 6-year contract extension? Now he's getting paid. It worked out for him. If I'm him now, I'm kind of glad I did that because you're guaranteed to be getting that money for the next 5 years going forward. But if it was a disconnect within the organization, why do you think he signed that lengthy contract extension?
You're talking about Robinson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question for Amy Adams, I guess. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, why would you fire a GM in season when you're in first place? I mean, it's something went on. So whether the head coach and the GM no longer get along and they pick the head coach, which is likely the scenario. But my only point is, I think it's got more to do with what the Eagles showed about the rest of the roster. Like, that was a weak roster. Now, they took some hits. They had some injury issues coming into the game. Then they lost a corner. They obviously lost Treylon Burks. Their entire offense shut down. And Treylon Burks is, Jody, he's shown some nice development over the past couple of weeks, but it's not like he's Justin Jefferson or Stephon Diggs or Jamar Chase. He's a nice young player, and he gets hurt on that play by Marcus Epps, and they're done. They're cooked. I mean, think about the Eagles with Reed Blankenship and Josiah Scott. Now, we nitpick, and we have nitpicked and said Josiah gets beat, but they've proven to be competent backup players. They completely fell apart with a bunch of backup players against the Eagles. And I think the Eagles I think everybody jumped on that. Well, AJ embarrassed the Titans. They fired the GM. I think it was more to do with, look, this roster is really top heavy and it really stinks at the bottom. But either way, it doesn't make sense to fire a GM in season of a first place team. So something weird is going on.
Right. Well, paint me as one of those guys who think, yeah, A.J. Brown did what he did. Boom, stick a fork right in his eye. And that opened up the possibility because you're right. Prior to that, and they still are a first-place team, but they're a first-place team. They lost a bad division against Cincinnati. Yeah, it's a bad division. They're leading a bad division, but they are a first-place team. Oh, I think the straw that broke the camel's back was A.J. Brown doing what he did to the Tennessee Titans this week. Now, you might know more than me behind the scenes that the organization was the one who really pushed for that trade, and they did so even with an objection from the general manager. We saw the video. We know there was an objection from the coach, but I don't know where Robinson actually sat on that. But
and that's by the way, that's partly his fault to put him in a position where they feel like they can't pay AJ Brown the going rate of receivers in the league and where it was going. That's partially John Robinson's fault because they didn't have cap space and, they weren't in a position to do it. So that's partially his fault.
Wait. Do you believe that? They were fine underneath the cap. They just made a football conscious decision of, we don't want to pay. And, oh, by the way, the Eagles do this all the time with certain positions. We don't value that position enough. We don't want to invest that kind of money in the position. The Titans weren't a terribly capped team this year.
I think they were 2.5. But they could have worked it out. I mean, anybody can work it out.
That's what I mean. I don't buy that line of logic. I think it was just they didn't want to invest in a wide receiver.
They didn't have a ton of cap space. But, again, it's how he proves you can manipulate things and kick things down the road, kick the can down the road. They could have done that. But the Eagles have an organizational philosophy. Remember, we're used to that. Like, a lot of other teams don't like to do that. Jeffrey Lurie's a part of that as well. He rubber stamped. Some ownerships don't want to do that. And you're right. Certainly the position, that's a bad decision. As good as Derrick Henry is, you can't assume in perpetuity that you're going to be a bad passing team. Eventually you got to get a quarterback. You got to go. If Ryan Tannehill's not good enough, you got to go in a different direction. And all of a sudden, you see how quickly it happened in Philadelphia. All of a sudden, things move quickly, and you might be a good passing team 2-3 years down. Who knows what Malik Willis turns into being? Who knows? But you can't just assume, we're a run-first team. We're going to be a run-first team in perpetuity. That's a bad way to run a team. So, but Jeffrey Lurie doesn't get enough credit, for how the Eagles are run. And not everybody's run like the Eagles.
I agree with you there. Lurie has given Howie Roseman the power that he needs and the flexibility that he needs to be able to put together the kind of roster that the Eagles have this year. So I'm 100% with you that we need to give a tip of the cap a little bit more often to Jeff Lurie with what he's doing. All right. The team they're facing this Sunday, John, is a team that made major changes during the offseason. The Giants, I think, were at least 4 straight years out of the playoffs. Maybe it's 5. I haven't looked it up. I should. But it's been a while since the Giants have been in the postseason, and they needed changes. They made a couple of mediocre to poor coaching hires over the last several years. Dave Gettleman was hired because he was an ex-Giant, brought back, talking about hog mollies. Yeah, that didn't pan out a little bit for the Giants. So they needed to shake up the organization. They did, bringing in Shine and Dable from Buffalo, tap into a winning organization, which the Bills have been. Smart move. Got off to this great start, but now have lost 3 of their last 4 games, 4 non-wins in 4 out of their last 5, including the tie last week. I was slightly more bullish on the Giants than you were. You were like, they're doing it with mirrors, Joe. I don't know how they're 6-1 because the analytics and the stats just don't add up to a team being 6-1. What do you think? Something had to change. Was it strength of schedule, the teams they're playing? Sooner or later, that the water had to find its level, and they're going to pay prices for not having a great statistical team. What do you think happened to the Giants?
They finally hired a good coach. You mentioned some of the, it was Ben McAdoo, and then it was
Pat Shurmur,
Joe Judge. They did a bad job in the post Tom Coughlin era. McAdoo had the 1 season, and the Eagles were considering hiring him. And he won. I think that was the last time they made the playoffs. So that would have been Doug Peterson's first year. So that would have been 2016. And then I think they won 10, 11 games somewhere. Somewhere 10, 11 games with Ben McAdoo. And you say, they got things going. And then he won, I think, 2-10. And they replaced him with Steve Spagnuolo. And then you went to Pat Shurmur and Joe Judge, which were disasters. They got a good coach, and Nick Sirianni, I talked about it earlier in the week, raved about him, but they've been 3 wins, 5 wins, 4 wins, 4 wins. I mean, they've been a bad football team for a long time now. And it started at the top, and now I think they've gotten it right with Brian Daboll. And, they signaled basically. There were 2 teams to me that signaled we're rebuilding. Chicago and the Giants. They were eventually, we're not good. We gotta rebuild this thing. And Brian Daboll's got them ahead of schedule. And they're winning football games, and no, it doesn't look great on paper. But 7-4-1 is pretty stinking successful for the talent level they have. And that's you know, that tells you how good the coach has been, and Eagles fans should, you know, now start paying attention to the Giants, because this is not the Giants of Ben McAdoo and Pat Shermer and Joe Judge. They got a good coach, and they're headed back in the right direction. They're going to continue to make good decisions. They're going to continue to add talent. But right now, they're not equipped to deal with the Eagles. They're just not equipped. I can't imagine. It would have to be U.S. Zach. Like, what would have to happen for the Eagles to lose this game? Basically, we saw it. Washington, same thing. You got to play bad offensively. You got to play bad defensively. You got to turn the football over. You got to make mistake after mistake after mistake. Can it happen? Of course it can happen. But they do not have the explosive ability to keep up with the Eagles. Saquon Barkley and their best receivers, Darius Slayton. I mean,
and
Daniel
by the
Jones is
way,
the quarterback.
Slayton's made plays for him. He averages 17 yards per reception. Now, he doesn't get enough receptions. The Giants don't throw the ball effectively enough over the course of a game, but 17 per reception, that's pretty damn good. But if you take him out, what other options do they have? They have nothing else on the outside. Yeah. They got the young tight end Bellinger back last week, and he got a couple of grabs after a scary injury he had. He got poked in the eye and was bleeding on the field. It was actually pretty ugly. They got him back last week, so
he's a good player. He's a good player.
Eagles need to be aware of him. But they have other than Saquon Barkley, what scares you about the Giants?
Nothing. Wan'Dale Robinson was, you know, their rookie receiver, but he's hurt. He had some, you know, at least explosive ability. You know, Kenny Galladay has done nothing to the point they don't even play him. David Sills, Richie James. I'm looking at these receivers. Yeah, I mean, nothing. They're not fearful, and that's, you know, when we keep talking about Reed Blankenship and how well he's playing. Zach brought up a good point, saying, "Well, the Eagles haven't played offenses that can take advantage of you know, throwing the football in the middle of the field." And they're not going to do it again this week. So, you know, where you would look at Reed Blankenship and say, oh, maybe we start to wring our hands a little bit. They don't have the ability to take advantage of it. So it's tough to, other than it's an NFC East game. Yeah, they tend to be closer. We all know all the tropes with division rivalries. Other than that, I can't be fearful of this team. You know me, from day one, I said I don't know, mirrors. Yeah, how they doing it?
You wrote off the Giants. You said they're not even trying to win. They're in full rebuild mode, and then sure enough, they're 6-1. How the hell is this happening? I didn't quite understand 6-1, but I gave them a little bit more credit than you do. But now the last 4 weeks, it looks like what you said was coming true. Yeah, they're just not that good. They found ways to win games that they hadn't been dominant and are overly impressive, but you look up at the scoreboard, end of the game, oh, shoot, Giants won again. I give you one other thing that the Eagles have to be on top of this weekend defensively. Daniel Jones running the football.
Yeah.
I do enough shows in New York. I don't do as many as I used to, but I do one every once in a while. And Giant fans can't stand me because I point out the fact that Daniel Jones isn't a franchise quarterback. He was overdrafted when he was drafted, and they've continued to stick with him when he's not a franchise quarterback. How many playoff games have they won with Daniel? Oh, that's right. They haven't made the playoffs yet with Daniel Jones. And you go ahead and blame the coaching staff and everybody else. I'll tell you, Daniel Jones is just not a franchise quarterback. But he's a pretty athletic guy, and he can take off and make plays on the run. He actually averages more yards per run than Jalen Hurts does. Now, Hurts gets hurt by the fact that he gets a whole bunch of those 3rd and 1 dives into the middle of the line. He's getting 1 yard at a time, which brings his average run down. But Jones actually averages more per carry per run than he does.
Oh, yeah. He's been really effective. And that's been, you know, and Saquon Barkley's having a big year as well, although he started to slow down a little bit because they've leaned on him. But he's having a great year running the football almost 6 yards a carry. And for whatever reason, people don't recognize the fact that he's athletic. I don't know. Maybe he's a little goopy looking, a little lanky, but he's athletic and he can run the football. And the Eagles know that from the big run in Lincoln Financial Field. And people joked about that because he tripped himself.
I was going to say,
he did trip himself.
Eagles had nothing to do with him coming down.
No, he did trip himself, but he did go 70 yards or whatever before he tripped himself.
You got to be careful around the 10-yard line. And that was here in Philadelphia. They don't have that issue. Yeah, you make fun of that trip all you want. Jones hasn't tripped on the 10-yard line at MetLife Stadium.
No. But the bottom line is he was drafted, I believe, in 2019.
Fifth overall pick, 18, I think it was.
2019.
19. Oh, yeah. Oh, same draft as A.J. Brown. I ran those. Did I run those names by you yesterday here on Birds 365? I know I meant to.
No.
Okay, quick aside, and I'll let you get back to your point. We had this past week, A.J. Brown, the very motivated A.J. Brown, the maybe a little ticked off A.J. Brown at the Tennessee Titans for trading him. Back in 2019, when A.J. Brown came out, 51st pick in the draft in the second round, middle of the second round, the New York Giants didn't pass on him once, didn't pass on him twice, passed on him 3 times. They had 3 first-round picks in 2019, Daniel Jones, Dexter Lawrence.
Good player, by the way.
DeAndre Baker. A quarterback whose job was to cover A.J. Brown in the SEC. They took him at 30, 31, 32. They had a bottom of the first-round draft pick. Never called A.J. Brown's name out. So in case A.J. doesn't know it, which I can pretty much guarantee you he does, someone tell him this week, if you catch him down there today walking through, do point out to him, John, that the Giants passed on him 3 times in 2019. Because I like the way the motivated A.J. Brown plays, if we can judge by last week against the Titans at all.
Yeah. Well, I'll bring it up to him. I talk to A.J. every week. AJ's, yeah. I mean, DeAndre Baker, there were some off the field, obviously, issues with DeAndre. I don't think he had talent, obviously. I think he went to Georgia, right, DeAndre?
Yeah, Georgia guy. Played against A.J. Brown.
Yeah, he was a good player in college. Dexter Lawrence has turned into a really good player. And so they at least hit on one. Daniel Jones is the 6th overall pick. I just think I believe it was the Patriots who drafted Harry late in the first round. And so obviously they're looking at receiver. And I remember in the second round, Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown. So the Patriots have the bigger question on what the hell they were thinking.
All right, but don't mention that to A.J. Just tell him the Giants passed on him 3 times. Get him good and riled up about sticking it in the Giants' eye the same way he did the Titans' eye this past week.
Yeah, he doesn't have. He really wanted to stick it in the eye of the Titans.
Understood, but you got to come up with something to get him as motivated again this week.
AJ wanted to stay with the Titans, and he wanted to be there, and was disappointed. So I'm glad it worked out for him.
Agreed. All right, so Giants and Eagles this week. Hopefully the Eagles lose the coin toss and take the ball first, because I believe they'll go right down the field, stick in the end zone, just like they did this past week, and we don't have to worry about the coach deferring. You mentioned how Sirianni mentioned this week that Brian Daboll and their former relationship with other teams are boys and our pals. We had that couple of weeks ago against Indianapolis with Frank Reich having been the Indy coach and then fired just before the 2 teams were supposed to meet. And we saw Sirianni and his reaction after the game. Are he and Daboll that tight that this is something we need to keep our eye on again this week? Pre-game handshake, post-game hug. How's it going to play between
you're going to see the pre-game hug. Yeah, they're close. They've always, they only worked together the 1 year. But they've always stayed in contact. Now, Nick always says his three biggest influences are his dad, coaching, his coaching influence. Larry Karras, the name you always hear, is Mount Union coach, and Frank Reich. So it's not to that level. But as I said, Brian Daboll gave him his first full positional coaching job in Kansas City. And he liked him, and he took him under his wing and thought he had a big future. And it was ironic that Nick beat Brian to a head coaching job by 1 year. But Brian was, he was an offensive coordinator. He was already on. And that year probably hurt Brian because they were 2-14. That probably hurt him and set him back. But he really took an interest in Nick and Jim Bob Cooter. And Nick has never forgotten it. So yeah, he has tremendous respect for Brian Daboll, but he's not Frank Reich.
Agreed, but he may turn out to eclipse Frank Reich. When you say he's not Frank Reich, you mean in the pantheon of who Nick Sirianni looks up to. He could become a better head coach than Frank.
Oh yeah, but in Nick's eyes, nobody beat Larry Karras. He thinks Larry Karras is Bear Bryant or Nick Saban, one of the greatest college coaches of all time, according to Nick.
One stat that I did come up with crunching some numbers for this upcoming game last night was, and I did not know this. You and I talk about the Giants every once in a while because they're divisional rival, and they did get off the 6-1 start. Now they come back to the pack. Their rankings across the league, they're not up there in offense. They're not up there in defense. And oh, by the way, they stink at special teams too. Did you know that they're actually ranked behind the Eagles in special teams? Going into last week, the Eagles were 32nd in the National Football League. There's 32 teams in the NFL, folks, which means they were dead last, but they had a good enough week that they skyrocketed up to number 29. The Giants are 30th. So not only aren't the Giants a threat with the ball or trying to defend the Eagles and keep them off the scoreboard, their special teams stink on ice like the Eagles do too. Do you think this game is decided on specials, John? The less inept special teams?
I'm interested. I'm interested in the Eagles special teams from the consistency standpoint. Can they do it again? Can they get better? Or is this the classic overcorrection? But you're right about, when we talk about and I say the talent that doesn't match up with the record, and that's why I give Brian so much credit. So if you go to those grades, I assume you were getting them from PFF. I don't know. So, the best overall team graded by PFF is the Eagles. Chiefs are second, 49ers third. A lot of teams that you would assume. The Giants, remember, are 7-4-1, right? So that's a pretty good record. And they'd be in the playoffs if the playoffs started today.
Correct.
Grading the overall teams, PFF has them 30th.
They're only the 30th ranked team in the
30th
NFL?
Ranked team.
Holy mackerel, I didn't know that.
Over the Chicago Bears are 31 and the Houston Texans are 32. Arizona's better. The Chargers, they have rated very low. The Carolina Panthers, Jacksonville's 26. The Giants are the 30th ranked team from the film, and he's finding ways to win games.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
That is good coaching.
Yeah.
Get the most out of it. And by the way, that special teams from the Giants that I told you is ranked down at the very bottom, now below the Philadelphia Eagles. If they had a guy who could step up, and I've actually been a fan of this guy because he is tremendously consistent. Graham Gano had a chance to win the game the other night.
He's a good kicker. He's
a very good kicker. But he had a 58-yarder with the game on the line, and he came up woefully short. I mean,
didn't
the
see it.
ball bounced in like the middle of the end zone. It wasn't like it just snuck under the crossbar. 58, which in the NFL now these days, there are guys making 60s all the time.
Yeah.
Who was it?
Zerline
Cowboy
hit a 60.
kicker earlier this year. Kicked it from 60. Then they took the penalty. So they backed it up, or he kicked it from 58, and then they backed it up to 63, and he made it again. So guys are making field goals of that range all the time. Gano wasn't even close. It like you could see it, and they give you the kind of difficult angle to be able to judge how much distance is on a
They give you crappy angles on field goals. I've noticed that now.
They do.
They give you that field angle, which doesn't give you the perception. But yeah, so many guys.
It tells you whether it's going to be within the uprights, but you got no idea about distance. Then they gave you the side angle. You go, holy mackerel, that wasn't even close. Yeah. So if the Giants need a long field goal against the Eagles, end of the first half or end of the game, you don't sweat it. Graham Gano's not going. He's not banging it home from 60.
Your guy banged through a 60-yarder last week. Greg the Leg.
Greg the Leg out of nowhere came back to pound a 60-yarder. He used to be good like that when he was on the Rams. He hasn't been good like that the last couple of years, but he's.
But there's a difference, Shody. He was kicking indoors, pristine conditions. You know,
that's true.
When you start, the Giants were at home last week, weren't they?
Yeah, it was at MetLife.
So that's far more difficult. 58's difficult outside in the Northeast at this time of year, unless you're Justin Tucker, and he'll probably make it.
Yeah, he kind of, all the rules go by the boards when you're talking about Justin Tucker. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Coming up next, we're going to go Eagles and the National Football League look at one of the best in the business who covers it all for the Associated Press. Rob Motti going to jump back in with us here on Birds 365. Stick around.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Jim Gardner is an icon.
A Philadelphia treasure.
He's a mentor, a pace setter.
Jim is my North Star.
He's trusted, revered,
appreciated.
He is Action News.
He's compassionate, honest,
and fair. He is extremely dedicated, motivated, and always seeking the truth.
He's also funny. We are a team of many.
Jim Gardner is our leader, and we're lucky to have him.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Mac guys here on Birds 365. We're hoping to be joined by Rob Motti from the Associated Press, lead writer for AP. Should be jumping in any minute now. And I will ask Rob about the major acquisition yesterday by the defending world champion Los Angeles Rams. Scoop up Baker Mayfield on waivers. I apologize because I don't remember exactly who it was, but somebody tweeted out last night, hey, count your Christmas blessings. Russell Wilson versus Baker Mayfield on Christmas Day. When the schedules came out, John, and it was the Rams against the Broncos late December, you're going, wow, that could be a Super Bowl preview. Couldn't be further from the truth. Those are two of the worst teams in the National Football League. Baker Mayfield and Russell Wilson. Not quite the careers, though, both of those two guys were banking on having at this stage.
I think the Rams are got to be in the conversation for being the worst Super Bowl defense in NFL history. Well, let's bring Rob in. Let's ask Rob. Rob, did you get that? The Rams might be. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. The worst Super Bowl winner when it comes to defense the next season. I mean, they've been a disaster this season.
Yeah.
We got Rob. He might be freezing up. I'll give you the one off the top of my head, and I could be woefully wrong about this. Rob, you hearing us?
Yeah, I hear. I think they are. Yeah, the worst team. Worst Super Bowl defending team, and they've been just a total mess, a total disaster. And I think you could sense that this could happen because of all the things they did to get to the point to where they were all in to win, and they invested a lot of money in a lot of skill position guys. And once you start to lose players to injuries, they don't have backups to go to that are experienced. They don't have backups to go to who could step in and get the job. They got to go to younger players, and they're just not positioned to have a deep roster. And that's where they're at right now. And I think that it's been a mess. It's been a disaster. And for those who don't like Sean McVay, it's kind of fun to watch.
Yeah. The boy genius, not quite getting it done this year. On that note, and John and I have talked about this here on the show before, need your take as well. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Eagles did make a play for Russell Wilson, inquired about him this past year. He didn't want to come in. All right, didn't get him. They did inquire about Deshaun Watson, definitely had interest in him. He wanted no part of coming in. Oh, he didn't get him. Jalen Hurts turns into Jalen Hurts. That story has been well written. Eagles really wanted Allen Robinson this offseason.
Yeah.
And he ended up going to the Rams and basically doing diddly squat. Allen Robinson over-evaluated. You're going to blame it all on Stafford not being there. Why has he been a complete non-factor for the defending champions?
I think it could be a combination of those. Obviously, Matthew Stafford not being in a lineup, being in and out of the lineup. Allen Robinson's a little bit older, but like you said, too, it's when you're pursuing someone, sometimes you're going after players, oftentimes, based on what they've done in other systems, what they've done with other teams, the success they've had in the past, and you're projecting that onto what you can do or what you feel they can do with your team. And it doesn't always work out. Obviously, it hasn't worked out with some of the higher profile quarterbacks in the league across over the course of this season. And it's not a shocker that it doesn't happen sometimes. Sometimes it often doesn't happen with running backs. You think a running back and you could plug him in and he can go, and he just doesn't have that success. It's dependent upon the offensive line, the scheme, the blocking, all of those things. I think it's tougher to project success with guys who are at the tail end of their careers than it is guys who are certainly younger, coming off their first contract, as it is for some of these guys who are in their late 20s, early 30s. The Eagles have pushed all the right buttons. They've made all the right moves, and it's looking like this is a team that's destined for Glendale, Arizona. And if anything less happens, it's going to be a huge major disappointment, which is such a surprise to be able to this season. Like, you thought they were going to be good. I thought they were going to be good. I thought they were going to be division winners. But to sit here right now at 11-1 as, to me, the prohibitive favorite to come out of the NFC, I know what the odds makers say, and there's the Bills, the Chiefs, and then you got the Cowboys in the mix. Eagles really look like a team with no flaws, or very few flaws. They got to come out of the NFC.
It has been amazing, and sometimes the stars align. Look, Howie is going to win Executive of the Year. He should win Executive of the Year. Jody brought up some names. Add in Christian Kirk. You know, if they get Christian Kirk, they don't get A.J. Brown. If they get Marcus Williams, they don't get C.J. Gardner-Johnson. And you get mixed up in the moment and saying, oh, we lost out on Marcus Williams. And all of a sudden you have the NFL interception leader. You lose out on a good player in Christian Kirk, and you turn in and get a great player in A.J. Brown. Sometimes the stars just align. But when I compare the Rams, Rob, the difference to me is the depth, as you mentioned. And why don't they have that depth? Because they got to pay the quarterback $40 million. The Eagles are paying their quarterback $1 million. Now that's going to end. So that window is open, and it's not open a crack. It is wide open because they have such tremendous depth on this roster, because you don't have to pay the quarterback. Now, so you bring up how disappointing would it be if the Eagles don't get to Glendale? Whew, it has changed quickly because they need to take advantage of this window.
Oh, John, absolutely. And that's a great point you bring up, because when you're paying look at the Green Bay Packers, what you're paying Aaron Rodgers, and how can you fill out the rest of the roster? How are you able to assemble around these guys? The fact that Jalen Hurts is on a rookie contract, a second-round pick rookie contract, you've been able to supplement, you've been able to build a roster around him. You can bring in Linval Joseph and Sue in the middle of the season and add guys. You have this ability, and I think things have worked out for them. I was messing around a couple of weeks ago wondering, like, who's the best draft pick in the history of Howie Roseman? Is it Jordan Mailata, or is it Jalen Hurts? At this point, to draft Jalen Hurts, and we remember everything surrounding it, right? When he comes out, second-round pick, and you had Carson and all that. If Jalen Hurts is going to lead you to a Super Bowl as a second-round pick, that's the greatest draft pick in Howie Roseman history.
Could very
Jordan,
well be.
That's a good question, though, Rob, because Jordan, as a seventh-round pick who never put a helmet on in his life and turns into a franchise left tackle, but quarterback is so important. You probably default to the quarterback. But, man, it's a good question. That is a good question.
Smells like a Rob Marty book after the season is over and done with. I'm just saying that, if that's the way you're going. All right. I do want to jump around and talk about the entire league while we got you. Jimmy G goes down. They say broken foot, season-ending surgery. Yesterday, come out and say, we might not need surgery. You could actually be back in 6 or 7 weeks, which would be into the playoffs, but they got to get there before he ever comes back. Will things be pretty or ugly for the San Francisco 49ers?
Oh, I see what you did there.
I'm not a writer. I got to go with the cute little catchphrase. I can't do a whole book like you two guys, so I got to try and be cute when I can. Which way is the quarterback position go for San Francisco for the next 6 weeks?
I think this team is in a position where the defense is so solid. Their defense is so good, so strong, and they got a run game and a lot of weapons. I don't expect Brock Purdy to be as efficient as he was against Miami. To step in and do what he was able to do in that game was pretty impressive, having such little experience that this guy has as a rookie. But they're in a position where they can grind out wins defensively, run the ball, and ask him not to do all that much. He's going to have to manage games just like Jimmy Garoppolo did. As far as Jimmy returning, I think I remember the Eagles going through this with A.J. Feely stepping in after Donovan broke his foot in the Arizona game way back in 02, 03. was maybe 3 or 4 games that AJ Feely had to play, and then Donovan steps in the playoffs. They beat Atlanta, and then they lose to Tampa Bay, the Rondé Barber game. I don't know if the 49ers can expect Jimmy G to be able to step into an NFC championship if they get there and be more effective than the guy who helped get them there. I think they got to just proceed as if Brock Purdy's their quarterback the rest of the season. Now they got to match up this week against Tampa Bay that you think you got an offense coming in the Buccaneers that can't score more than 17 points, that's got no creativity, that relies solely dependent upon a 45-year-old quarterback making plays at the end of the game. It's a good shot and a good opportunity for them, to a great test for the 49ers this week. And I think this game comes down to who avoids Dallas in the first round of the playoffs, because the Bucs and the Niners are in that 3-4 mix, and you want to win that game to get the 3. If the Bucs win, they're still a game behind, but they'll have the edge in the tiebreaker in case they do catch up. So nobody wants to play Dallas in the first round of the playoffs. So that's why this game's a big one for both teams.
Yeah, very talented team. You mentioned the odds there, Rob, and you know how people in Philadelphia are. They get very upset that the Eagles aren't getting the respect of Kansas City or Buffalo or whomever is on top of the AFC.
On underdogs column then.
Yeah. Zach's going to write another book. Even though they shouldn't, they haven't been underdogs all year, by the way, the Eagles. They're favored in every game. They should be favored. They're favored this week as they go up to MetLife Stadium. But overall, I think we all, and I think you were in this category, I think we talked about this in the offseason. We all thought the AFC was going to be much better than the NFC. Turns out we're all wrong, I think, at this stage. You mentioned Dallas. To me, they're a tremendously talented team. San Francisco, if they had their quarterback, whether it was Trey Lance or even Jimmy G, is, maybe the most difficult team to deal with. The Eagles are the Eagles. Minnesota's 10-2. They get no respect. We were just talking about Brian Daboll, what he's done with the Giants. The AFC, people default to, but there's a bunch of teams that have underachieved. The Chargers, I thought, were going to be a great team. Denver, we all thought. Russell Wilson, they're going to be a great team. The AFC West as a whole, we said, ooh, look at how tough that division is. Not tough at all. Bad division. Why do people can't admit they're wrong and say the NFC, they got good teams. They got better teams than the AFC. They're deeper than the AFC. Am I crazy?
No, I think the NFC East turned out to be what we all thought the AFC West would be. And here's the NFC East with 4 teams with a legitimate shot at making the playoffs, and we'll see what happens with the Eagles and the Giants and the Commanders, because I think the Giants are in a tougher spot right now than Washington, but they're going to face the Eagles the last game of the year, and the Eagles probably won't need that. So that's a W for the Giants. So that gets them to 8. Now they got to find a 9th and potentially a 10th in there. The top heavy teams in the AFC, Buffalo, Kansas City, and Cincinnati, are still really good. Those 3 teams, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Buffalo, I think you can list them 1, 2, 3 any which way that you feel, and you're not that far off, right? This week, all right, Buffalo is now the 1 seed. Kansas City just lost. They lost to Cincinnati. Does that drop Kansas City to 3rd? All 3 of those teams have legitimate shot to win the Super Bowl. I think you take those 3 from the AFC and then you go to the NFC. To me, it's Eagles, Dallas, and then Minnesota, right? Yeah. Eagles, Dallas, then Minnesota, and Minnesota doesn't get a lot of respect for. It's
they give up 1,000 passing yards every week, but they turn it over.
10-2 team this week. A 10-2 team versus a 5-7 team, and they're an underdog.
Detroit's favored,
yeah. I know it's in Detroit, but they're an underdog. I don't know when that's ever happened this late in the season that you have a 5-game advantage in the win-loss column, and you're an underdog. That tells you what Vegas thinks about the Lions. That makes it a Lions line to me. I'm taking the Lions in my pro picks now at this point when you see something like that. But that That game means a lot to the Eagles because that allows them to build a bigger cushion for the number 1 seed. And then potentially those last 2 games don't matter. The Saints game where it only matters if you beat them. And if you do, that helps you in the draft scenario and all that stuff. So that's going to be interesting going down the stretch. But I'll take those 3 teams out of AFC, 2 out of the NFC, and I'll say those are the 5 teams that I think could be in the Super Bowl.
Gardner Minshew better be ready for Week 17 because you're right. The Eagles need that game against the Saints. They might not need it for 2022, but they may need it for the 2023 draft. All right, got to ask about this guy. And you're not as guilty as charged as other outlets like ESPN and Fox. We're 3 years removed from Odell Beckham being a factor in the National Football League. And yet his free agency tour and how teams are back and forth and, oh, what a major addition it could be. The Cowboys at least let it leak out that, he might not be able to play. If you're wondering why we haven't scooped him up immediately, he doesn't want to work out. We've got questions, medical issues and the like. But it doesn't stop the conversation about Odell Beckham Jr. and or bring down the buzz attached to it. Why is that? It's been a while. I know he had a couple of good games helping the Rams to get to the Super Bowl last year, got hurt in the Super Bowl itself. But why is Odell Beckham the most talked about guy in the National Football League?
Star power. The name is OBJ. I think he's one of the Instagram celebrities who commands the most. You get those surveys that they send out there and go, which players get the most hits and which players can make the most money. But Jody, you're right, and I think throughout this process, I've wondered when a guy tore his ACL in February, could he possibly be ready right now? Like. I saw Chris Godwin go down with an ACL in December last year for the Buccaneers, and he made it back for early in the season in September, but he hasn't been himself until the past couple weeks. And I don't anticipate Odell Beckham Jr. being able to contribute in any significant way when he first comes back. The only guy we ever saw come back from an ACL and be immediately who he was Adrian Peterson. Remember that? Tore his ACL, came back, was the MVP of the league, ran for 2,000 yards. Normally, it takes a guy till the next year. It's a 3, 4, 5 month recovery process after you're playing. It's 9 to 12 months. Then you come back, and it's still 3, 4 till you feel like who you are. Interesting that it's the Cowboys who leak that information. Are they leaking that to maybe set one? They could be doing that to get him at certainly a lower contract, or 2, hey guys, hey Dak, hey Zeke, hey, we know you guys want Odell. He's not healthy, and we can't make this happen right now. So it's very interesting that the leaky mouth comes from Jerry Jones.
I'll give you one other possibility. Jerry doesn't like to be second guessed. Jerry is it's got the most rabbit ears of any NFL owner. And whoa, we're the Cowboys. Odell's come to how do we not have this guy signed? Well, Jerry doesn't like to hear that through the media, through the fans, or whatever else. He's very sensitive. He can't play. He can't get on the field. It's not that we're not willing. We know we want him to, but I'm not doing that. It's a bad football deal. Jerry can get defensive pretty damn quickly. I think that's part of it.
And by the way, OBJ would be a better fit for the Giants. I mean, they need a receiver. So when he's healthy, Michael Gallup, they went through it with Michael Gallup. He's coming back up a torn ACL. Now he's just getting right, and he's actually contributing a little bit. Yeah, I don't get it. But Rob, you're right with the OBJ. It's just the superstar talk. Now, I want to talk about the superstar here in Philadelphia, and people don't want to label him that. Second consecutive Player of the Week award announced this morning for Jalen Hurts. This is the MVP of the league, in my estimation. Now, it's not over. There's still plenty of time left. That could change. I don't get the feeling, and obviously you're involved, and I don't want you to go too deep into it from that perspective. But I don't get the feeling there's a lot of push for Jalen Hurts. A lot of people who say this is an MVP caliber guy. Patrick Mahomes, we all know Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen, we all know Josh Allen. But do you sense that people don't believe in Jalen Hurts? Because I sense that.
He doesn't have Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen's resume coming into the season. And I think people are aware of that. They know that they didn't consider him to be an MVP candidate coming into the year. But he's put people on notice, John. And my role in that is I don't vote, but I have assigned the voters. And for the voters, knowing that I'm from Philly originally, a few guys have reached out to me over the course of the season. Hey, Jalen Hurts is really like he's right there. And I think this past week when Burrow beats Mahomes and Jalen for the second consecutive week does what he did, 1 week is with his legs. This week for a team to go over 350 rushing and then 350 passing, it's so impressive. It's so significant. He doesn't make mistakes. He's so protective of the football. He makes smart decisions. He's a winning player. And we've always talked about the intangibles and the characteristics and all those things that he brings to the table. And now it translates on the field. I don't vote, but if I had one right now, he's my MVP. Right now, Jalen Hurts would be my MVP. But this is a award that it's going week to week. Yep. Because you look at it next week, we could be sitting here going, "Oh, did you see the way Burrow did this, or Mahomes did that, or Allen did that?" It's going to come down to who finishes. I think you have to give a team credit for getting that number one seed. But where I do feel that maybe some of these other guys have an edge is Jalen has so many weapons around him, and he's got a dominant offensive line. I joked about this a couple weeks ago and said, if ever a unit were to be considered for an MVP, it would be the entire Eagles offensive line. To which one guy said to me, a voter, he was like, has an offensive lineman ever? And I'm like, never won. I got to dig in and see if they ever got a vote, but it was always one vote. Now that we expanded it to give me a top five, could somebody get a vote as an offensive line? Could Jason Kelce get a vote? Like, I think the depth of the team, the weapons around him, and the strength of the offensive line may factor a little bit against Jalen, because some voters may feel like Patrick Mahomes does more with less. And I don't think that's fair. I understand where it comes from. But if you're going to go quarterback, base it on the totality of what he's been able to do all year. And yeah, he may have some more weapons. Yes, he may have the best offensive line in football, but he's going out there producing week in and week out, and he's doing it with his legs. He's doing it with his arm. He's not making mistakes. To me, he's the MVP right now.
And Rob, since we went down the award-winning road, and you did a great job of explaining it, I have to say this all the time. It is it's a fluid situation. Just because you call Patrick Mahomes the MVP 2 weeks ago doesn't mean he's the MVP now. Just because John and I both said this week we'd vote for Jalen Hurts doesn't mean in 2 weeks we're going to say the same thing. It's that close. There's no runaway leader that it can go week to week. Who's the coach of the year in the NFL right now?
It hands down to me, Nick Sirianni. When you got one loss in your second season as a head coach for a team that is coming off a 9-9 season, and I know you same argument with Jalen Hurts. Yeah, you got more playmakers, you got more talent, you got the executive of the year, which isn't an official AP award, but I know there are other outlets who do give out an executive of the year, but that's certainly Howie. I'm not holding that against Nick Sirianni. If they rattle off a 15-2 season here or 16-1, whatever it may be, he's got to be the coach of the year. And I thought, I'm sure you guys thought it was a disgrace in baseball to see Buck Showalter get manager of the year in the National League when his team folded and couldn't even win the division. Like I certainly think that the NFL voters are going to recognize, and you had Brian Dable in the conversation, then they start losing a few games.
Yeah.
Right. Mike McDaniel's got to be in the conversation. Kyle Shanahan's going to get a look because he's now on his third quarterback, and we'll see how they finish. But Nick's and he's got one loss. He's got to be that. He's got to be there.
Yeah, it's almost it's like an interesting experiment because, if you go back to the preseason, Rob, and we said, oh, Nick's going to be 11-1, people say coach of the year, bang, no question. The expectations weren't there. But now as we go through the season, now the expectations have changed. The Eagles are expected to win every week. The Eagles are expected are favored every week. And all of a sudden you start looking at the guys like Dayball who are doing more with less perception wise. And so it's always interesting to see how people vote, and it comes down to everybody's definition. But, I wanted to give you a chance. I saw this on your Twitter account. Follow Rob at Rob Motti. You got a chance to take your daughters to see the GOAT. Is that, they're not Eagles fans? They have departed to Tom Brady. I can't blame them, by the way.
Yeah, well, they never were, right? They were so young in Philly, they didn't really care about sports. And then when they started to get into it here in Tampa, and Brady being Brady, and they get excited about seeing him, they've been wanting to go to a game, and I can't. How am I going to take them to a game when I'm working? Yeah. So I haven't been able to do it. So I thought this Monday, I flew home from Houston. I had that. The privilege of covering the worst game on the schedule, the Browns Texans, and it wasn't. I wasn't there for the game. Obviously, I was there for the Deshaun Watson return and all that nonsense. And I fly home early on Monday. It's my birthday. It's my first one since losing my dad, and I'm like, I want to do something special with my girls. So I thought, all right, let's do it. It's a Monday night game. I don't have to watch the whole league today. It's just one game. I can take them. So man, I haven't bought tickets for a football game in forever. I didn't know what tickets cost. I'm on the secondary. I didn't want to dial up any. It's like last minute. I'm gonna say, hey, can I buy some tickets to it? Yeah. So I'm like, on this site, on that site, you pay whatever ridiculous amount. We're sitting there, and I'm going, this is a terrible football game. And they're having a great time. The Bucs fans are embracing them. Everybody. And then we stayed till the end. I'm like, you got to stay. We stayed till the end. Tom Brady, you never know what he can do.
Yeah, and they got to see history. With all Tom Brady's accolades and all that, he had only come back from that type of deficit that late once, and that was the Super Bowl. Against Atlanta, and he does it again at your daughter's first game live. That's
44th fourth quarter comeback to pass Peyton Manning. So he broke the record for fourth quarter comebacks, and it was beautiful. I had seats as he's running off, and you could see them cheering on the ESPN screen as Brady's running off. So they'll never forget their first game. The problem is, guys, now they want to go back. I'm like, I don't know what
kind of paying, buddy.
Kind of big. Now that you've admitted, best words you can ever hear, better than Disney. They said,
"Ooh, wow. Very nice,
better than Disney." So I'll take that.
Glad that worked out for you. But now that you've admitted to bad parenting and you're allowing your daughters to be Buccaneer fans, I'm bringing you back here to Philadelphia. Before you became Mr. National Associated Press, you were an Eagle guy forever. Best Eagles-Giant game you ever covered?
I'm not good. I can't remember covered, but I can remember as a kid growing up as a fan, the Clyde Simmons, the field goal that was blocked in overtime. That I've never seen this before in the end. It was the only game. It was overtime. I think it was in the Meadowlands. Blocked field goal in overtime. And it goes behind the line of scrimmage. Clyde Simmons, who's a defensive end, but he's on the offensive line, picks it up and runs it in for a touchdown. And we were like going, what in the world? Merrill, and I think it was Stan Walters at the time, was his play-by-play guy, are going crazy. I just remember going back, Jody, you probably were on WIP at the time back then. And like, I used to tape, like on a cassette player, Merrill's calls and play and they'd be like the answering machine, the voice of the answering machine at my parents' house. People will call Merrill going nuts on a Clyde Simmons. Oh, by the way, you've reached the Motties aren't home right now. So that's the most memorable. Obviously the Deshaun game, right? Deshaun, the last punt. the Westbrook punt return, Visikahema beating up the goalpost, Randall Cunningham, the Monday night game, that
Carl Banks,
the Jimmy Giles play, right, where that sticks out. But I don't think there's ever been a wackier ending than a defensive lineman playing offensive line in overtime, picking up a blocked field goal. I don't think people even know that rule, that you can pick up a blocked field goal if it goes behind the line of scrimmage and run with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And
by the way, Jordan Davis, before his injury, was the wing guy on field goal protect. Still going on today. Yeah.
We shall see. Marty, man, you just admitted that your parents were better parents than you've become because they put Merrill Reese on the answering machine. You're bringing your daughters to Buccaneer game. But we love you and we forgive you. And get them up here to a Philadelphia Eagles game. The Eagles are 11-1, in case you hadn't noticed. You spring a little bit. You might have paid a lot on the secondary market for those tickets this week, but it's worth it to go to an Eagles.
Well, I think I got some connections in Philly. We can make that happen.
12 is 12. You can't fight that tidal wave. I understand exactly what's going on, Rob.
Hey, I'll take them to Glendale when the Eagles get there.
There you go. Very good attitude out of you, Rob. Always a pleasure. We'll get you back up before the playoffs start. Thanks for jumping into
Thanks, Rob.
You got it, guys. Take care.
That's Rob Motti, the lead writer for the Associated Press for the National Football League, but forever a Philadelphia.
Yeah, you can't fight Tom Brady with young daughters. I mean, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do.
I guess once you go there, you can't come back down that road. And they did get a good ending to a game for their first ever football game. John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We're your Mac and Mac Birds 365 guys. You know it's coming. Time for a bow on the show.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Jim Gardner is an icon.
A Philadelphia treasure.
He's a mentor, a pace setter.
Jim is my North Star.
He's trusted, revered,
appreciated.
He is Action News.
He's compassionate, honest,
and fair. He is extremely dedicated, motivated, and always seeking the truth.
He's also funny. We are a team of many.
Jim Gardner is our leader, and we're lucky to have him.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
right, coming down the home stretch on a walk-through Wednesday edition of Birds 365. We got the Mac guys. All right, beginning of the show, I ticked off some Eagle fans by pointing out that the trade that Howie Roseman made in season to get Robert Quinn was A, unnecessary, and B, at this point, an abject failure, which Eagle fans didn't like me saying anything negative about Howie Roseman, or at least those on the stream. Sorry about that.
He used to say only negative things about Howie Roseman.
Who, me?
No, a lot of Eagles fans.
Oh, a lot of Eagle fans, yes. Yeah. And no, I oh, by the way, the 50 minutes in the middle of the show, we nominated Jalen Hurts for MVP, Nick Sirianni for Coach of the Year, and Howie Roseman for Executive of the Year. So we've done enough at lifting the Eagles up.
Yeah.
Now we've gone full circle. I'm going to come back and I'm going to annoy Eagle fans again here. I got concerns for this afternoon, John. The Eagles are going to have enough guys on the injury list today listed as rest.
Now, that'll be tomorrow. That'll be tomorrow now because it's walkthrough Wednesday. But you're right. It'll just be Thursday.
Are they? Are those guys who would be? They come out with an injury report even on a walkthrough, don't they?
Yeah, it's an estimation.
Estimation. I'm telling you, the estimation is going to list at least 10 rest guys, is it not?
No, that's what I'm saying. They've shifted to the actual practice. So that you see it every week. It just changed. It used to be on Wednesdays, the big injury report with all the rest guys. Now it's on Thursdays because that's the bigger practice of the week now that they've shifted through walkthrough Wednesday. So you're going to see it. It's just going to be on Thursday. It's not going to be today.
Are they going to have enough guys to walk through today? Between guys who are resting and
everybody
now 3 guys short on the practice squad. Are you sure they can actually field the squad for a walkthrough?
Yeah, they're going to be just fine.
I don't know about that.
By the way, Mike Florio, I want to mention Mike Florio creating issues for me this morning.
How's that?
Last year, this is what he tweeted an hour ago. Last year, when the OBJ free agency sputtered, we said, watch the Rams. As this year's OBJ free agency sputters, I'll say this, watch the Eagles. Come on, Mike. God.
Which, by the way, was OBJ released and picked up via free agency, or was he traded?
Last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was released. He was released, yeah.
I thought he was traded.
Either way, now you mentioned injuries. There were some injuries in that game. Now, Nick Sirianni, that game last week, I'm looking up OBJ while I talk. How much time we got, Jody?
We got a minute and change here.
Quez Watkins was hurt in that game. Now, they said nothing is serious, nothing is expected to be long term. But if Quez Watkins is injured more seriously than we know, maybe ring shopping comes into it.
So you're not 100% dismissing what Florio's hinting at, huh?
I am 100% dismissing if Quez is healthy.
Okay.
If he's not healthy,
may change the dynamic. Okay,
yeah.
I see where you're going there. One other quickie injury question. Find out today, maybe not till tomorrow. Kazir White also injured during the game. That's how Nakobe Dean got in, and he stayed in because it was a blowout, and he made some plays and actually looked good. Any update on Kazir as to whether that was just
same thing? He said same thing. He said nothing serious. OBJ. Was waived November 8th.
He was waived. Okay.
November 11th. But what Mike says, it didn't sputter. It took 3 days. I mean, it didn't sputter. He took 3 days last time. He got waived on November 8th, signed on November 11th. But to your point, Kaiser, same thing. He said, we'll see on Wednesday. They don't give us any injury updates anymore, but they don't see anything as tremendously serious with the injury.
Well,
so we'll see.
Johnny Mack will be down there today, and he'll be here tomorrow reporting on it. You and I get this done again tomorrow, McMullen. You in?
Yeah, planning on it. Day to day, but planning on it.
The Mac and Mac guys will be back in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.